Staying tuned to Daybreak on this 10th day of November 2020, and we want us to begin the conversation around what has been informing public discourse in the country over the past few weeks since the release of the BBI report. And of course, we know that the latest, or the two expecting to happen today, you'll see that in the front page of the Daily Nation as well as the Standard, race to save BBI as President Kenyatta and ODM leader Raila Odinga cast net-wide to win support for handshake report and tame allies jostling for power. And the senators have been pushing for a clout, and governors want gender clause on running mates changed, as well as the pastoralists demand additional resources to address historical injustices, while MCAs are seeking extra cash. So you'll see there's a lot of interests that are being traded in the public discourse. And to help us have this conversation, we have Mahiri Zaja, who is a former commissioner with the IEBC. We also have Gladys Wanga, who is a former, she's actually a current woman representative for Homa Bay County. I don't know what her future aspirations are. She'll tell us someday. But also we're waiting to be joined by Priscilla Nyokabi, who is a commissioner with the National Gender and Equality Commission. Let me begin with you, Commissioner, because so much conversations going on. We haven't had you on this BBI report, especially on the proposals to do with gender, the proposals to do with county allocation to be raised to 35%. What are your initial views on the entire report and how it's framed and how it promises to change how things work in Kenya?
Thank you, Sam, for having me, and good morning to everyone. And I think the BBI process is offering Kenyans another opportunity to look at our milestones and achievements since we passed the Constitution of Kenya 2010. And generally, it is an opportunity for the whole country to have another fresh conversation around governance issues. And not just on electoral reforms, but majorly around devolution. And given the opportunity, I can speak so much about devolution. But I think for now, you even aired a report on pastoralists coming in with further demands on the document because of the issue of exclusion from that report. And it is not just about pastoralists. And here, allow me even to point out other minority communities, such as the community I come from, the Kuria in Nyanza and Nyanza region, the Tesos in Western region, and the Ilchamus in Baringo. These are communities that have suffered past injustices, past exclusion from the decision-making table.
Right.
And now it is time for these communities to be heard. It is an open secret, for example, like the Kuria in Migori County have suffered for so long. And it was just a big mistake that the Kuria people were never given their own county, such as the people of Lamu. And now we are stuck in a situation where other counties, other communities are counting gains during the devolution process, during the devolution era. And the people in Kuria are only lamenting that they have been excluded from major projects, major development projects, even in governance, even in allocation of positions at the county level. This is also seen at the national level. So something surely needs to be done for these communities to feel part and parcel of development in Kenya. So we would also want to see the people of Kuria coming up with further demands which will be taken into consideration in this BBI process, because otherwise they will be completely obliterated from the development agenda. And I'm happy that this opportunity has come now. But generally, it's a good time for the nation to have another conversation around development.
And yet, even as you said that there are certain communities that have been marginalized since independence, the Constitution 2010 provides that all these marginalized groups will be heard and will be considered, especially even in elective and appointive positions. So for 10 years, we've not implemented that. How certain are you that this process is going now to herald that opportunity for finally their views to be heard and their cry to be responded to?
Sam, we just need to look at the track record. I've given a very good example of the Kuria people in Migori. During the 2013 elections, because of the negotiated democracy, we were able to get a deputy governor we were able to get the senator, and the woman rep, Honorable Denita, had to fight her way in court to get the position of the woman rep. During the 2017 general elections, we got nothing, not even the nominated seats. Some of them we actually were denied because of various political interests. So I think looking at such track records, it is time to correct that. And if we are going to go into the BBI, and even looking at the proposals on the 70 positions, if the courier people will not get even 2 positions out of those 70, I think we'll be making a big mistake, because we are leaving out segments of society who will continue being marginalized and who will continue being excluded from the political platform.
Right, very interesting there. And I want us to listen to some conversations that were made yesterday because of the pastoralist communities who were meeting and making a declaration. Of course, this was coming after a few days of a similar press conference where some people said that they were opposed to the BBI report because they didn't find anything for them. But now there appears to be some change of tune. Listen.
To support BBI and raise our issues on the table, not outside the table, as some did in 1962.
The issues that they have raised today, the issue of revenue sharing, then the issue of equalization fund, the issue of livestock marketing authority. As you know, livestock is the mainstay of the economy of this region of our country.
All right, so those are different communities coming up and airing their views. And one wonders, Honorable Wanga, because we had, Honorable Wanga, we had this opportunity to have all these conversations since the handshake of March 9th. The BBI task force, I think, was gazetted sometimes, was it July of 2018? But up to now, there appears that some of these proposals that were tabled before the BBI task force were never considered. So what are we dealing with here, and what are the chances that whatever these concerns that are being aired are going to be part and parcel of what is implemented going forward?
Thank you, Sam, and good morning. As you say correctly, the BBI team went around the country for 2 years, listening to various concerns of the people. They have then segmented the BBI report into 4 categories. What needs to be done through constitutional amendments, what needs to be done through legislation, what needs to be done through policy, and what needs to be done through administrative actions. And therefore, you hear many issues raised by different groups. For example, some just on the last video we have watched and we've heard about what the pastoralists were raising. For example, the Livestock Development Authority, that you and I will agree perhaps is not something that would be in the Constitution. That is a creation by statute. So I think the conversation is within the context of all the 4 areas. Because when you talk about a Livestock Development Authority, that is something that the PPG and other persons and even government can bring in through statute. So I think everybody needs to be listened to, and then there are issues placed as to whether they are matters of the Constitution or they are matters of legislation or policy or administrative action. For example, the issue of minorities that live within counties, and Commissioner Mahiri has raised the issue of the couriers in Migori. And I'm glad that she has come back and said that in 2013, the couriers in Migori had the Senate position, had the position of the woman rep, had the position of the deputy governor, so that the Luo of Migori at the time had the governor position. In terms of the county positions, the only position they had was the one for the governor. So it means that if paid attention to, these matters can work even for the minorities. And even in the current situation,
right.
I know that Commissioner Mahiri said the couriers have nothing, but I do know that the position of the deputy governor, even at the moment, is with the courier community. So what I would like to state is, perhaps, and the couriers did raise their issues validly, and even other minority communities, as she mentioned, the Tesos, the Ilchamos, the Sabaots, you know, in Mount Elgon and so on. So I think as a country, maybe the conversation we need to have, and this is at the time of delimitation of boundaries, because the BBI process is not delimiting boundaries. That is why there are no constituencies that are being created. They are only seats. There are no constituencies that are being created. They are only remaining at 290. There are no new counties that are being created through the BBI process. There are only 47.
Right.
And therefore, the conversation we will need to have as we move towards delimitation of boundaries is, how do we make it stringent that the counties that have minorities, because even as we speak, there is a requirement that 30% of positions within counties should go to minority communities. That is in law, in the County Governments Act, for example. That is in law. So how do we enforce this kind of requirement? And this is the conversation that we need to have. How do we put penalties for people who do not enforce these requirements for 30% inclusion? Because we need to agree whether we want to have new counties for every minority community, so that we have a county for the Ilchamus in Baringo, we have a county for the Teso, we have a county for the Sabaotis, or do we need to strengthen the requirement for inclusion within the existing counties? And that's a conversation.
Honorable Wanga, you raised a very interesting point on the place for minority communities. And when you talk about Migori County, my attention is attracted by the fact that we know that, yes, there is that deputy governor, he's Himahanga, but when you have to look at the influence that he has in the management of that county, it's almost minimal. I could be wrong, but you can correct that. Yep.
Sam, that is not a challenge of Migori alone. The question of deputy governors and their role is a bigger question. Even a deputy governor in any other county would remain without any responsibilities, and that is why the BBI has proposed that deputy governors should now have a docket within the county executive and also have specific responsibilities. The issue of deputy governors being rendered moribund is not just because sometimes they are minorities. Even deputy governors from majority communities are being rendered moribund because the function of the deputy governor was not properly defined within the constitution. And I'm glad that the BBI process and the BBI report is addressing that conclusively, so that a deputy governor will have a docket and have a role.
Right, and joining this conversation is Honorable Priscilla Nyokabi. Honorable Nyokabi, you've been one of the champions of the BBI process, and now we are where we are. I remember the first time that we spoke about this just after, actually on the day that it was being unveiled at the Bomas of Kenya. You were very positive about the proposals in the report, but also saying that there are areas that needed to be looked into. There has been calls that the document should be reopened. There is contestation, especially from the proponents of the BBI, including the Joint Secretary by the name Paul Mwangi. So with all these views coming in, some of them may touch on what is already contained in the constitutional amendment bill, which is proposed, but others may not. So how do we move forward incorporating the interest of different sides, whether political or community?
Thank you, and happy to join the conversation. I think it is indeed true that the report has attracted a lot of interest, which is a good thing. That people are calling for the report to be opened, that is a good thing. It means that people are reading, it means that people are looking at how the different parts, the policy, the legislative, the administrative, and the constitution affect them. But then what also happens is that the report is itself not the constitutional bill. So there will be a constitutional bill drafted that the promoters then seek signatures on for the purposes of the Article 256 on the popular initiative. So as the bill is being drafted, there isn't that much room to open because 2 years is already gone with the conversation going on. But what would happen is that some of the issues will then be better drafted. I think it's more an issue of drafting, it's more an issue of editorial, so that the bill can then be ready for the purposes of the referendum. So there is just the window of cleanup, the window of editing, the window of clarifying, and the window of putting the bill in the BBI report into a constitutional bill that will then make progress in terms of the constitutional review process. But this kind of conversation is exactly what the BBI intended, that we talk about issues that concern our country, and we try to resolve issues that concern us and build as many bridges as we can. I'm happy that Commissioner Lillian is here. Build bridges with the Kuria, build bridges with every community in our country, and put issues on the table that need to be discussed. And even for us women, that the gender bridges also bridges with the young people, bridges with the disability community, as many bridges as we can, bridges with the minority and pastoralists. I think we continue building the bridges and continue discussions until the constitution is ready. In any case, you have to remember this is not the last process. Parliament is not closed. So we must continue to solve our issues in Parliament. This is not the end of resolution of Kenyan issues. This is the beginning of resolution of Kenyan issues.
Right, and let's make an attempt of dissecting some of the issues that are coming up, because you raised the gender bridges, and that's interesting because yesterday a section of governors who were meeting, I think in Nairobi, they touched on that, because when you look at the document that is being touted to propose to amend the constitution, there's no assurance of gender representation or gender parity, because if it's the 360 members of the National Assembly, there's no specific route to achieving a two-third gender rule, apart from saying that political parties are the ones that are responsible to ensure in their nomination lists they have at least a third of either gender. But there's also the proposal that when a governor is running, they have to consider the opposite gender for the deputy governor. Listen to what the male governor said yesterday.
Women come out and fight it with men, yeah, they will succeed.
They said has used a language of compromise, that the governor who is the candidate shall consider a running mate from the other gender. So long as the one shall consider, I don't see any problem with it.
It would be very good, because you start building the women capacity, and they also start to learn, how to run for office.
What we are doing here is we are having a toothpick comb to check, and we are happy. We are making progress.
And Commissioner Zaja, it is unfortunate that when you listen to Governor Ngilu, they are saying that it will be a good opportunity to build the capacity of women. I'm just wondering, why should it not be the other way around, that you have a female governor like Anne Waiguru, then the running mate is male? So how do you attain this formula with such kind of an attitude in the country?
I think probably she meant just encouraging more women to join the political arena. It's been very difficult in the past for women to break some of these glass ceilings. But we have good examples, like the example you've given of Governor Waiguru, people who have been sharp in politics, women who have come out in politics and they have shown their capacity to be great leaders. They only need to be given that opportunity. And in fact, I'm encouraged really to hear our leaders agreeing that it is time for women to be considered, and the gender question, or the gender equation rather, to come out in some of these discussions we are having. If you're going to have all these top positions reserved for men, because we know very well that it is difficult for women to go through some of those nomination processes. But if we put that law, in fact, the word consider should be removed. Every other person who is vying for a governor position shall have the opposite gender for a running mate. I think it should just be shall, a mandatory provision, and not just a consideration. And women have built capacities over the years. We are not in that era where women were fighting for space to be seen. We're in an era where women finally can sit at the decision-making table and can sit as leaders. They can speak to their people as leaders. And I think the norms around our traditional views, our traditional ways of viewing women as people who should remain in the kitchen and concerned with the house chores. We are long past that. We should be looking at how to integrate women in every segment of our decision-making processes. That's my take.
Okay, I'll come to you, Honorable Wanga. Before I do so, Honorable Priscilla, so now the last time I was having that conversation with you, should it be on 26th of October, you were saying that the issue of gender needed to have a clearer formula. What are what is the thinking? Because last week when we had Honorable Wanga and Honorable Gladys Boss and Beatrice Alachi, there was no clarity on what exactly will be done, whether the 70 members of the National Assembly from multiple member constituencies are going to be women or what the formula will be. Is there any advancement in this discussion?
Yes, there is advancement in the conversation, and there is also the holistic reading of the clauses and also of the document. So that, and I like what we are doing, that Senate is done, so that we have the full gender parity at Senate at 50-50. So what remains is how to then make the two houses. Again, the philosophy now is philosophy of parliament, and not just because of gender. If you look at election of members of parliament, a lot of the constitutional provisions on parliament are actually on both houses, both the National Assembly and the Senate. So if you look at that, so we are looking at parliament in wholesome. So you have 50% in the Senate. You need 18% in the National Assembly for both houses to give you 34% of women. And so that matter of the National Assembly, there is agreement that among the issues that editorial cleanup is going on around is actually going to be the matter of the National Assembly and the full implementation of the two-thirds, because the report already says that the full implementation of two-thirds will be done. So the only small clause we need is to ensure that the full implementation of two-thirds is done. And Maraga advisory, the CJ's advisory on dissolution is bearing on this matter. So there is no choice other than to give a clause that fully implements the two-thirds. So the two options still remain: a multi-member seat, making the opposite gender rule on the multi-member seats, that if an area has two members of parliament, then the two will not be of the same gender, like what we have. And now this one is not shall consider. This one will be that they have to be of the opposite gender in the multi-member constituencies. And the multi-member constituencies are 70. So we're going to have 70 constituencies, more than one member of parliament. So if you make multi-member seats opposite gender, you actually fulfill the two-thirds gender. But there is also conversation on the Duale bill. Remember, we have been following Article 177 in the county assemblies. There is also a conversation around the guarantee that Article 177 gives, and bringing Article 177 on to 97, which is what we had with Duale 1 and Duale 2, the bills that we're trying to pass in Parliament. So there is also a conversation around just making sure that post-election, if Kenyan people do not elect women, then there would have to be some mechanism to ensure the two-thirds gender rule is met. So in the bill that comes out after the editing process, that bill will have fully complied with the two-thirds gender rule in the National Assembly and the Senate, in Parliament.
But when you call it the editing that will happen, that appears like very new provisions that will be added to the document. Does that mean that there's that possibility of reopening the document?
No, it's not new provisions, it's alignment. Actually, what we are looking for here is alignment, because the text is already very clear that the full implementation of two-thirds has to be done. And this is not just BBI 2, it was also in BBI 1. BBI 1 promised the women that the full implementation of two-thirds will be done. BBI 2 says the same. So it's just an alignment, it's a numbers question that they just, it's not as big a problem. You're not creating new provisions. The multi-member seats are already there. You're actually just ensuring that the gender issue is not forgotten and is fully met. Actually, the question is not even two-thirds. It is full implementation of two-thirds. 34% in Parliament is going to be gender equalization.
Honorable Wanga,
so not totally opening the document, but just making sure that the alignment is done.
Okay, Honorable Wanga, are you confident that through some of the proposals that Honorable Priscilla there is raising, there's going to be an assurance of achieving the two-thirds gender rule, despite you heard from the governor of Migori and what he's saying that it's up to women to come and fight for the seats?
Thank you, Sam. Yes, we were in Naivasha and a lot of these issues were in conversation. So a matter like the two-third gender principle, Sam, if you look at your report, I think it's page 7, there is detailed discussion there about inclusion of women and girls, what Honorable Nyokabi is calling building gender bridges. And the report is very clear on the matter of attainment in full of the two-third gender principle. So it's no longer about, it's no longer a conversation about what is being added or anything new. It is the nexus between the report and what was proposed in the report as the Constitution Amendment Bill. And so from where I sit, I'm satisfied that the matter of the two-third gender rule is going to be fully achieved. And if we are sincere and honest, what the women of Kenya have been fighting for since the days of Grace Onyango has been the issue of attainment of the two-third gender principle in Parliament. The BBI provides the opportunity for attainment of the full two-third gender rule in Parliament. So when I hear conversation from especially women leaders saying that women have been given a good deal, I ask them to their face that why did we, as women leaders, fight so hard for Duale 1, Duale 2, Duale 3, Duale 4? It was because we were looking at, in fact, moving Article 177 to Article 97 so that the full two-third gender principle is met. But now we have a Senate that is 50-50. I mean, I think that is a big achievement. And even, and currently, there are women who are nominated to the Senate and they do not have a vote on matters such as revenue sharing.
Right.
So what is the point of having women in the Senate and not having them voting on such a critical matter? Now you have 50-50 in the Senate and they can vote. And they are voting now on 35% of the resources. So I think that's a very, very critical achievement there. I have seen governors speaking to the opposite gender rule. As women, we also want to put on the table that the opposite gender rule, as has been indicated in the BBI report, is an irreducible minimum for us.
Right.
It is a matter that was in the BBI 1. It is a matter that is in the BBI 2. And we are not making laws for any given generation. The Constitution is for posterity. So I do not think we should look at me now, you know, or me at the current.
Okay.
It should be a law that we are making for posterity. So I want to urge the governors that this for the women is also an irreducible minimum. It is a matter that has been in the BBI 1 report, the BBI 2 report, and now it has been put there, and it should even be strengthened further in our view so that we remove the consider.
Okay. All right. Of course, Commissioner Zaja says that it should be shall, not really giving room for a deputy for a governor candidate or whatever the case may be to have the option of choosing whether to follow or not. And we take a short break here. Engineer Lazaro Kanyamboki is saying that the BBI is widening its net to accommodate views of the opposers. That's something we welcome. The question has been, for how long can this continue? Based on the timelines that were released by the team that met in Naivasha sometimes last week. When we come back, we'll be talking about the structure of the Independent Electoral Boundaries Commission, and that's where we have Commissioner Mahiri Zaja, who worked at that commission as a vice chairperson. There are those several proposals, including having 4 commissioners out of the 7 representing political parties. We'll have that conversation after the break.